Hello there. This is See You Next Time. Today we're taking a tour around r/entitled parents, where we've got crazy bus Karens, enforced name changes, and murderous HIPAA violations. Enjoy. This one's from Sensitive Hippo. Entitled parent goes after my Switch on the bus. The context. I'm 18 and have quit my job working at the theme park, so now I'm currently studying production arts at a new college in the city close to my hometown. But this often means I have to take a 40-minute bus ride every day that I have college. I live in the UK and still live on the south end of the country. I'm also non-binary and bisexual and have severe social anxiety towards strangers, especially if they're in my personal space. This is formed from years of bullying at the hands of students and some teachers in previous schools and colleges. I've gotten over some of the fear of being close to random strangers, which allowed me to get my theme park job in the first place, but of course not all of it, as I'm still very non-confrontational, but I'm also quite snappy if people snap at me. I usually keep my Switch with me when I go to college, as well as my personal laptop with a mouse and cable for separate work in my bag. It's kind of a stress relief thing, and it helps me ignore strangers in crowded places. On to the story. I was on the bus home from college in town after a 9 to 5 during 1 week of having a studio project, which of course left me tired and just wanting to get home and relax. So of course, when my bus finally arrived at the stop, I hopped on and took out my Switch, putting in headphones so that I'd be blissfully unaware of the strange people around me. I did notice, however, that a particularly snobby-looking mother and her 12-year-old kid have got on the bus as well. But I didn't pay them any mind, for now at least. After maybe about 15 minutes of blissful gaming, I felt a tap on my shoulder which made me jump. I took off my headphones and looked up. The entitled kid was now hovering over me, watching me play intently. I was immediately uncomfortable. I don't like kids very much, but I tried to talk to them nonetheless. Hey, buddy, can you stop watching me? Why? Because it makes me kind of uncomfortable. Okay. I watched the kid go back to his seat next to his mother, who hadn't looked up from her phone since she and her kid got on the bus. I thought nothing more of it, since I was a kid who loved watching people play games once too. Oh, how wrong I was to think it was over, how wrong indeed. I returned to my game and began putting my headphones back on. Before I could even look down again, however, the entitled mother was now hovering above me. She had a typical Karen look, blondish bob-cut hair, tacky jewellery, the works. I only had to take a single look at this woman up close and I already knew what was coming. Her voice was harsh and strict, but for now she was trying to sound pleasant. That's a nice Switch game you have there. Thanks. You know, my kid really likes gaming. Yeah, she actually extended the really. I bet he does. There's a lot to like. Would you mind if I borrowed it so my kid can have a turn? No, sorry. The moment the word no hit her ears, her demeanour instantly shifted. Her eyes narrowed, and she had that exact "Did you just tell me no?" face. Why not? My kid is really bored and would just love to use your Switch. But it's mine, and I don't really want to give it to a stranger on a bus. But it's a kid's game. You don't need it. Give it to me. No, please just leave me be. At this point, the entitled mother got even angrier. She was getting louder, and some of the other people on the bus had turned and begun staring. Give me the Switch! You're too old for it anyway! Okay, please just leave me alone already. I'm not going to give it to you or your kid. I'd had enough at this point, so I turned off the Switch and put it in my bag, zipping it up and placing my lock on it. The entitled mother then decides to attempt to grab my bag frantically, but she missed the bag, it was on the seat next to me, and grabbed my arm instead. Now, as I've said, I'm not good with strangers being close to me, so when she grabbed my arm, my reflexes kicked in and I slapped her hard. Apparently, this was enough to make her back off, and she began shrieking that I was a delinquent and I'd just assaulted her. She began looking desperately at the onlookers on the bus, but they'd all seen her try to grab the bag from me, so they ignored her. It must have dawned on her that she wasn't going to get her way, so she let out a defeated sigh and stormed back to her seat. She then sat there, stewing furiously for the rest of the drive home. I sat back in my seat, shaking due to my anxiety. I quickly got on my phone and let my mother know what had happened. She was picking me up from the bus station. Happy to admit, however, the rest of my ride home was confrontation-free, but the entitled mother and her kid stayed on the bus for the whole ride, so I wasn't able to relax for the rest of the ride home. When we arrived at the bus station, my mother was waiting at the stop. When I got off, she asked me to point out who the entitled mother was. My mum walked over to her and began to talk to her, though at this point I was stressed enough and put my headphones back on. When my mum came back over, she was fuming, but she didn't say anything until we got in the car. I didn't need to say anything. My mother simply said one line which summed up that encounter for me perfectly. Ugh, some people are just the worst. I couldn't have agreed more. This one's from Tactical Pixie. Parents think I ruined my brother's chances for recovery. So my brother was in an accident a few weeks back, cleaning the gutters, and he fell off the ladder and hit his head on the concrete walkway in front of his house. Bad brain bleed, and it was not looking good for his chances. However, as time progressed, he was getting better and recovering a lot more than we thought he would. Towards the end of his stay, the hospital was going to release him to a local neurological rehabilitation facility by the name of Clover. Name change and all that. I've heard horror stories of the place, and I've been to that facility many times as an EMT on various calls, and while I've never seen signs of the horrors, I've never felt particularly comfortable there. I expressed my concerns to my parents about the place, even saying that I wouldn't let my nana go there, even though we've never gotten along. She hates me and the feeling is mutual. Even with that, I'd not stick her there. My concerns were blown off. So I talked to the nurses that were taking care of my brother, and they put my mind at ease. Clover Nursing Home is a hot mess, and I had right to be worried. Clover Rehab, on the other hand, has a solid reputation as being a good rehabilitation facility, and is not affiliated with the nursing home at all. Never having run any calls out there, I had no idea other than that they existed. I relaxed, and that was that, or so I thought. Day of my brother's discharge, and they're no longer sending him to Clover. His insurance rejected that, and instead opted for in-home rehab. My parents are convinced that I called up the insurance company and demanded they not send him there, as if HIPAA laws would allow them to even talk to me without medical power of attorney. I tried to explain that, and that the decision was more likely due to the fact that his recovery has progressed to the point where the insurance company didn't think it was worth it to spend the money on a bed when in-home is cheaper and his recovery has progressed so well. But now my mum and dad aren't speaking to me, apart from one hateful rant about how I'm a horrible daughter and a disgrace for ruining my brother's chances for a full recovery. Look, I get the parents' heads are mashed by the situation. It's the stuff of nightmares to have a child all fucked up from a head injury. I also get some kind of primal desire to apportion blame somewhere and lash out. All that still doesn't allow me to see past how shitty this behaviour is. To decide that your daughter is deliberately trying to screw up her brother's recovery from a brain injury and point blank refusing to listen to reason is ridiculously toxic. OP left a comment in response to another about going no contact. I was thinking that myself. Hubs made a suggestion that I liked. If they rant on my social media or send me texts and emails, he suggested that I keep the links to the HIPAA laws, translated into English for people who don't speak lawyer, and just respond by sending them the link. Nothing more, nothing less. No comments, no excuses, just silence, and the strongly implied suggestion that they read the laws that would not allow me to do what they think I did for themselves. I reckon this is definitely worth doing, though I suspect you'll just get blank looks and more grief, and I doubt you have the time or the crayons required to explain it to them. This one's from Transportation OK 3707. Entitled parents are forcing me to change my daughter's name. My entitled father called a couple of days ago and demanded that my daughter's name have my maiden name. For context, I am ethnically Filipino but a second-generation immigrant, as I immigrated when I was 6 years old. Filipino tradition is such that the child's middle name must be the mother's maiden name. For example, if my mother's maiden name is Smith, then my middle name is Smith. My daughter had just graduated high school, and my parents received a picture of her diploma. When they looked at the photo, they realised it did not have their last name, my maiden name, on it. They were very upset. Given that me and my husband are culturally American but ethnically Filipino, husband is like half, we decided to give her a new name for her middle name and have her hold her father's last name. I was also forced to have a hyphenated last name. Even though I wanted my husband's last name, I conceded on having both names since my parents paid for my education. It's hell to deal with even to this day. Entitled father complained and demanded that I change her name. I told him that we are Americans and live in America, including my entitled parents. Therefore, we will use what is culturally appropriate. He told me he doesn't care about the American way and that I'm turning my back on the right Filipino way. My daughter's already 18 years old. I can't legally do anything regarding her name anymore. I had told him that, but he yelled and demanded that I must get it done. Not my daughter, me, and I'd better, or else. Personally, I have a myriad of reasons why I don't want my daughter to have my maiden name. A lot of issues, such as federal aid, schooling, and even inheritance could also be on the line if she were to change her name. Plus, she just doesn't want a different name. My daughter said no, and both husband and I agree with her. Later that night, she called them and told them, very nicely, that she will in no way change her name. The only reason she would is if she gets married in the future. Entitled Dad threw a fit on the phone and she ignored him and hung up. They haven't spoken to me since. I want to talk to my parents again, but if they're going to throw a fit over a name and continuously be upset, especially over a name they knew about for 18 years, then I will cut ties. I hope they get their act together. And we have an update a year later. Since then, there's been a lot of unravelling. I tried my best to hear them out. After speaking to my parents, they believe that because daughter has her own middle name, I'm turning my back on my own family and being Filipino. Entitled Dad said that because daughter is his granddaughter, then his name should be on that diploma. Now after this, we can all guess what he really means. He just wants to take credit for daughter graduating high school and going to a pretty goddamn good college and her further accomplishments as she gets older. Entitled father also attacked husband as well. He believes that husband is some sort of authoritarian figure to me and daughter, saying, "She is your daughter too!" Which basically is implying that husband is trying to take over our entire marriage. In reality, I'm the one in charge. I'm in charge of all the taxes, cleaning and cooking. Husband literally just goes to work. I like it this way. In the past, Entitled Dad would argue with me that I took husband's car to the body shop. He also threw a fit because I take the trash out. Entitled Dad keeps telling me that those are tasks a man should do, not the mother or the wife. As said again, I like being in charge of everything. Plus some context. My husband suffered from a terrible infection back in 2020. This has caused him to have issues with him being able to balance and walk well. So even then, husband can't do these tasks Entitled Dad complained about. Entitled father also believes that husband is faking his disability, saying, "He's stronger than he looks." Entitled parents have also complained about my daughter, unhappy with the way she dresses and how she isn't helping. For context, my daughter dresses like a normal teenager. Yes, she'll wear a crop top, but all kids dress like that. Though I don't entirely like it, I understand that it's the fashion for her generation, and that when the time comes, I trust that she will dress appropriately. They were unhappy that her white graduation dress, that would be covered by her graduation gown, was backless. Entitled parents are also upset that her midriff was showing another time. While bashing my husband for not helping, they also bashed daughter too. Again, I like it this way, and I like being in charge of everything. I truly understand how my parents feel about me, my marriage and daughter, saying, "Something just doesn't feel right." After hearing from my parents, I cut ties with them. I don't call them or visit. This year they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, but I, their only daughter and child, am not coming. I know I ain't gonna hear shit from my teacher about not planning it, but it's not her concern. Well, I'm with you, and it seems like your backbone is firmly in place. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the parents in these stories were very entitled. Weird, right? It's really jolly rather not on, don't you think? Tell you what? Let's get right in there and change the narrative. Perhaps you'd like to gather a charming coterie of companies and enlist a venal and corrupt shadowy government body to aid you in processing said Kabbalistic coteries into Soylent Green.
You gotta tell them, Soylent Green is people!
Before clicking the wee bell icon and sharing this video with the rest of this nightmarish and dystopian world. And remember, most importantly, collapsing a universal eigenfunction is an essential step in the complete domination of space-time, But don't worry, it's also a whole lot of fun. Especially when you do it with the aid of margarine, because margarine is the best way of greasing the right palms to make sure your unscrupulous activities run smoothly. This message is sponsored and endorsed by the Margarine Marketing Board, because butter is the devil's spunk.
See?
You.
Next.
Time.